Some people refer to her as a cunning empress, others as a strategic empress, and some even call her the xenophobic empress. Who is Empress Taytu Betul? Welcome to Africa's Untold with your Adre. Yes, too often does history remember emperors and kings, but sometimes the strongest force in royal spaces belongs to the women behind the throne or beside the throne. Taytu Betul understood something many African rulers were still trying to grasp. Colonialism never arrived as friendship. Before she became known as Empress Taytu Betul, she was a daughter from a very powerful noble family in Ethiopia. She grew up surrounded by politics and influence like many girls from Ethiopian Christian nobility. She received a strong religious education and also studied Arabic law, politics, and international affairs. Oh my God, this is so interesting to see like all the things they were doing. She was prepared for marriage early and married just at 10 years old to an officer of the Emperor Tewodros II. Her first husband was imprisoned during a military campaign. She then married a second time to the Jamach Takl Gorgis. This is how it is on the screen. Whom she later separated so she could marry a richer, more powerful man. Long story short, Taytu Betul had several marriages before meeting and marrying the future emperor. She was very strategic, you can say. Saleh Miriam became infatuated with Taytu Betul, famous for her slender fingers and fair complexion. They got married in April 1883. This marriage united two people with strong ambition and complementary strength for their rise to imperial power. She also brought to the marriage a considerable wealth through her, family, her farmland and pastures, as well as a vast network of economic exchanges thanks to her relatives. So network, connection. So when I said earlier that she separated from one of her husbands to marry a richer and more powerful one, it didn't mean that she wasn't rich. No, she came from a nobility and a very rich background as well. And this is something she carried into the marriage. This was not simply a royal marriage. It was a political alliance powerful enough to shape the future of an empire. Taytu had gained considerable political power both before and after she and Menelik were crowned emperor and empress in 1883. So take note that Menelik II was originally called Saleh Mariam before he became emperor, so the name changed. And in these very times, Europe pushed their westernization further into Africa, which led to several fractions within and with the royal house and in the society. But Empress Taytu Betul led the conservative group at court that opposed Western style changes and the so-called modernization that was happening in Ethiopia. In fact, according to historians, she was always consulted by the emperor prior to making important decisions, especially when it came to decisions that had to do with the westernization of Ethiopia. So long before Europe expansionism reached Ethiopia's borders, the empress already somehow distrusted the promises coming from Europe. While others hesitated, Taytu spoke loudly about the dangerous influence. Empress Taytu was the first to motivate the hesitant emperor and other men to stand up against Italians. She was deeply suspicious of European intentions towards Ethiopia. The empress held a hard line against the Italians, and when Italy invaded the empire from its Eritrean colony, so they already had a colony, right? So she was in that. She marched north with the emperor and the imperial army, commanding a force of Canonians at the historical Battle of Adwa. This great battle led to the humiliating defeat for the Italians in March 1896. This victory became one of the greatest African victory against European colonialism. The Battle of Adwa was not only a military victory at all. No, it was more than. It was a message to the world that Africa could resist empires and colonialism and win. African Empress Taytu Betul marched towards a European army instead of fleeing from it. Now, Menelik II and Taytu Betul were temporarily in possession of 4,000 prisoners of war. Even her husband often avoided and postponed unpleasant decision by answering, yes, okay, tomorrow. So his wife would be the one to say, absolutely not. That was how clear she was. To people and issues he just did not want to personally offend or refuse or deal with. So Taytu was known for being blunt and politically uncompromising. At a time when much of Africa was being divided on European maps, but Ethiopia refused to become another colonial possession. Then around 1906, the emperor's health began to decline. This was more or less an opening for Taytu, as his declining health meant she would make more decisions on his behalf, making her extremely powerful and, of course, leaving her rivals very angry. She appointed her favorites and relatives to most of the positions of power and influence. She was using her connection to elevate her connection. Anyway, it seems like Menelik also did not like this either. Or maybe he was afraid of, her family political influence at court will rise, So what did he do? Menelik II chose Sabla Wangel Halu to marry the future heir, Liege Iyasu, because her family was not connected to Taytu Betul's family. So you see, they're trying to play family politics with marriage. So marriage is just like a social political contract, right? Many nobles disliked Taytu Betul for favoring her relatives and people from Gonda. Nobles from Shoa, Tigray, and Wolo joined together to remove her from power. All these names are on the screen. In 1910, she was forced out. And Ras Hesema Nadu on the screen led a new regency government. Now, she was admired, feared, criticized, and resisted all at once. Powerful women in history are rarely remembered gently. They are called difficult, manipulative, aggressive, or dangerous for doing what powerful men are praised for. So Queen Taytu Betul's situation was not different. After being told to focus on caring for her sick husband, like he's the king, he will have a lot of people to care for him. Anyway, Taytu Betul slowly left politics. She and Menelik II, they had no children. So when Menelik died in 1913, his grandson Lee Iyasu became ruler. Taytu was sent to the old palace at Entoto near St. Mary's Church. She had founded that church. Now, there were differing opinions about Queen Taytu Betul. Even then, she also tried to help her stepdaughter ascend the throne in her last days. She founded Addis Ababa, the capital city of Ethiopia, and named it. I guess you didn't know that. She built the Entoto Meriam Church, which still stands till date. She gathered homeless orphans and educated them to be deacons, priests, and raised many others to several prestigious government positions. So she was like using all her power to bring more people into power. So she spent her final years there overlooking Addis Ababa. In 1917, she asked to return to Gondar but was refused. So she died 3 months later and was buried beside her husband at Taeka Negest Baeta Le Mariam Monastery. Even her enemies could not deny one thing. Empress Taytu Betul changed the course of Ethiopia's history forever. And perhaps that is why her legacy still sparks debate today. Because women who influence empires are rarely easy to erase from history or to contain within history.